Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Darksiders 2 Apocalyptic difficulty video walkthrough. We are still currently in the Heaven dungeon, and we're taking on a new enemy here, which is this kind of angelic, seraphic creature with 4 wings. And as you can see, she does have quite a lot of abilities to get out of the combos. You can't seem to keep hitting her and stunning her and getting her to flinch. So my strategy here is to close the distance with the death grip, do a couple of hits to try and get her staggered. As soon as she recovers, get the hell out of dodge. At this moment in time, we've got to the point where if you land a crit, you're getting life back. So in the combat, you don't really have to have that much skill. You can kind of mash your way to victory, and yeah, it should be okay. But once again, I'm here with the chat. The chat says hi chat, all that good stuff, and we're going to be taking a few more questions just to make this commentary a little different. I do apologise if you don't enjoy this setup, this format. There's a mute button, it exists for a reason, and if you don't like the guide, go watch something you do like. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be antagonised, it doesn't have to be anything, you know, stupid, any trolling. You can just leave a dislike and go somewhere else, and everyone's happy. But the first question we've got here, well, I say question, it's more of a statement. Seraphim, you should do a Dark Souls PvP series using weapons that normally don't get used. Well, I should, dude, but that involves building a character that can use weapons that don't usually get used, and there are no glitches in that game anymore, so it will take me hours, which is not something I'm willing to do. So, I'm going to continue to experiment with weapons in Dark Souls, but I can't promise anything, unfortunately. These guys right here, you can interrupt them with the death grip. The only problem with the death grip is the lock-on, and the lock-on on this game is about as useful as a glass hammer, so you need to be really careful and conscious of it. The Game Monkey asks, are you a dog or a cat person? I am neither. I dislike both equally. I've had both in my lifetime, and I've loved them both a very large amount, and then my mum's got rid of them, or they've died, and it's hurt, and I've steeled myself from it, so instead, I just don't get into that anymore. Heretic says, do you want kids in the future? How many? And thought of any names? So, I once said I was going to call my kid Lucifer, but it came with one response from my dad. He basically said if I were to do that, he would disown me. And that was me just being typical me, and going against the grain, going against the norm, being the social pariah, because my family is extremely... comes from a very religious origin. Right, my grandma, who lives down the road from me, has a picture of the Pope on one wall, picture of Jesus on the other, and they both have palm leaves behind them, signifying, you know, that palm thing where he came on the donkey and all that stuff, whatever. So, lot of, you know, ridiculous names that I would think of, but I'm a fan of biblical names. I'm a fan of weird names. I like names that are interesting and different. I do, and I don't want kids at this moment in time, and it's for a mature reason. I am a very selfish person. I'm extremely selfish, and at this moment in time, I think of myself. I think of myself over most things. There's only probably one person on this planet that I think over myself with, and that is my girlfriend. And I don't think that's an attitude that would make a good father. And don't get me wrong, I think I would be a good dad, but I don't think I'm mature enough at this moment in time to want to be a dad. So I would like to avoid it if I can. You know, if mistakes happen and it comes, then I will definitely do my best to perform that role. But as it stands, I've got too much ambition to give it up for another human being. Because when you have a child, that's it. You're done. Your life, your ambitions, your hunger stops. It ceases because you have to be there for something else. You have to be there for this person you've created. This vulnerable, you know, impressionable child needs your love and your affection and your attention 100% of the time. And if you do not do that, then you're a bad person, and you're not giving them all the opportunities that they deserve, which is sad. So that's one of the things that bugs me the most, when you see parents that don't give up their own ambitions for their children, because at that point you are living for something else, and that is your priority, and it's extremely selfish, and you're supposed to be selfless when you have children. That's the point. You know, you made a pact to create this creature, and boom, you're not coming through on your end of the bargain. But it's an interesting question. Children always are an interesting question, and it all depends on how much ambition you've got. So it's just one of those things. But Baby Jesus says, if you played RE6, what are your impressions on it? I made a guide on Leon's campaign, and I pretty much shit-talked that game the entire time, so if you watch that, you'll find out, and it saves me answering it here. But more of these flying guys, and there's a handful of them, so you want to be careful, because like anything else in games, when a bunch of stuff gets near you, it can kill you. It's, you know, this is the hardest difficulty. It's been designed in a way that every single encounter you take on in the next dungeon is a couple levels higher. And you can get to the point where you perhaps should be a higher level than you are to fight the enemies. So if you see a significant increase in difficulty, it usually means that you're slightly underleveled, which... that's one of the things that I really don't like about games, when there's just, you know, a brick wall of difficulty, all because your stats aren't a couple of modifiers higher. And it's a game that wants you to try and grind a little bit so that you can, you know, get the victory. And bringing it back to something I mentioned in a previous video was Final Fantasy XII. Every time you got to a new boss on that game, past the midway point, every single boss was so much harder than the enemies in that area, and if you didn't fight a lot of enemies, or you missed some, you would literally have to do some farming and grinding and get those levels up before you even stood a chance. And that is something that Final Fantasy's always had, but in the previous games you could use your abilities to get strong enough to take things down quite comfortably. And on that game, the fucking job list and that tile chart, I just didn't like it. I thought it was bad. Poundland asks, what's your favourite game franchise? I'm not too sure. I love a lot of games. I used to say Legend of Zelda, because I think... I didn't play the SNES ones all that much. I played them a little bit, but I never owned them, because I was young. But Ocarina of Time is one of my all-time favourite games. Majora's Mask is my favourite Zelda, because I think it's just perfect. Wind Waker was great. Twilight Princess was good, but wasn't too you know, wasn't to the same level. And I didn't really play Skyward Sword because you had to waggle that stupid douche stick, and I can't be arsed with messing about with the Wii. It really bugs me. But it's an interesting question, because I've always loved the Devil May Cry's. Devil May Cry's have got a special place in my heart. I don't know. I don't think I've got one. There's too many things I love. Like, I love Final Fantasies, I love Metal Gears, I love a lot of things. But it's a question that I can't answer, because I'm not too good when it comes to definitives like that on something as vast as gaming, because I love lots of games. I used to love wrestling games, but that was because I loved wrestling, and I no longer like wrestling, so wrestling games now are like licking paint. So Macross98 asks, if you were starving, would you eat your children? Yes, I would. I'm quite the lion, and I go out with a lioness, so we've got to make like a lion sometimes and eat them kids. But eating humans is an interesting situation to be put in, because it makes me wonder, like every film, it shows you that you get the shakes, which is weird. I don't want to get the shakes by eating kids. You know, if I can eat guilt-free and shake-free kid, you know, kid little Happy Burger or Happy Meal. That's a crossfade there to disguise editing, because I couldn't link it, apparently. Which somebody noticed in the Dark Souls videos, that he pointed out a time in the timeline and said, was that a cut? It's like, of course it was a cut, it's a fucking video. All videos are edited, brother, and I mentioned in the commentary that this is edited, so pointing out cuts is a little bit redundant unless you're going to critique it. You just asked if it was a cut. So, makes me wonder if he thought that his eye was stroking out, or he was having some kind of, you know, fit in his brain, or his synapses weren't firing. But it was a cut, and he did spot it. Have you watched episode 3 of Game of Thrones yet? I do not watch Game of Thrones. If I wanted to watch a bunch of lesbians have sex, I would do so with one hand free. And that's pretty much everything from the chat at this moment in time, folks. All those questions you had before are just completely gone, and we're back to talking about Darksiders 2. Now, I don't watch Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is probably great when you get into it, but I watched 2 episodes, and all it was a bunch of people talking, a bunch of lesbian sex, and a bunch of doggy style, and I'm sorry, but if I wanted to be titillated and have sex in my TV shows, I would not watch TV shows. I'm about story, I'm about development, and, you know, you don't have to do doggy for 20 minutes. It doesn't really get me. But I've seen all my friends respond to it. They say it's a fantastic show when you get into it. If you read the books, it's probably amazing, and I like that they're doing something that creative and they're sticking to that kind of genre, because they could have made a really shit version of that and they seem to have done it justice. It's just not my thing at all. It really isn't. Like, it's too... I know this probably sounds criminal to some people, but it's too Lord of the Ringsy for me, and I got so burnt out on Lord of the Rings that everything in the medieval fantasy realm just kind of looks not good to me anymore. It's one of the reasons I avoided Dark Souls, because that stuff just bores me. It doesn't do anything for me. So Hero of Canton asks, what did Darksiders 2 do wrong? What is fundamentally wrong with it that makes it so bad? So firstly, this game is not bad. This is a good game. This is a good game that could have been great. That's the distinction. And anybody that's watched the earlier parts of this guide will already know my opinions on it, but I'll reiterate it here for the sake of the stream and for anybody just dropping on. Darksiders 1 was an amazing game. It was a great game. It had flaws, but it embraced them because it was a new IP, and I forgave it for the flaws. It did not fix any of those flaws that it had in the previous game. All it did was make them worse. It made them more. It made the things I disliked more prevalent. And the things I disliked were this. The combat is too silly, it's too simple, and it looks better than it is. And any combat that looks better than it is a fundamentally failed combat system. I just kicked my keyboard because I'm a boss, but the props I would give it are they tried something different. They utilised sub-weapons, they utilised combos and more hits, but it never hit the nuance or the responsiveness or even just the technical standard of better games in this genre. So the combat never ever gets anywhere past casual button mashing and a lack of responsiveness. You then combine this with the enemy encounters, which were essentially, here's one enemy, you fight this one enemy, it's really fun. The combat works, it's fun. The next room, there's 50 enemies of the same thing, and everybody's on top of you, you can only evade 3 times before it stops, and it just turns into a giant mess of unresponsiveness. And that is not fun. And then the final thing that makes this game fail is the one thing I disliked the most about Darksiders 2 was how towards the end of the game it went from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon to dungeon, and I got dungeon fatigue. And if you get dungeon fatigue in a dungeon crawler like this, it's a bad thing. And here's a reason why you get that fatigue. It's called poor pacing. And what poor pacing does is it kills the flow of the game. So usually you will have a town or an area that's safe with people, with shops to talk to, that you can immerse yourself in, get some storyline. Then you move forward into a new environment where you do a little exploration, a little platforming, and then you meet a dungeon. You do the dungeon, you get something cool, you move into another unknown territory, you walk forward, you find another town, you do some side quests, you do some silly stuff, you do some exploring, some collectibles, somebody asks you to go and save somebody in a castle somewhere, you travel to the castle, it's another dungeon. Pacing, people. It's all about the in-betweens. The in-betweens make it good. And what do they go and do? There's no in-betweens on this game. It's dungeon, 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 dungeon. There are more dungeons at the beginning of this game, before the tutorial is even given, than there were in the entire Majora's Mask. And Majora's Mask had some of the best designed temples ever, and there was 5 of them, I think. The 4 points, and then the final one on the moon. It's like, why is there so many? And on this game, it gets to the point where you're in dungeons using abilities that you've already mastered, you've already used numerous times. So you're essentially just going through areas doing the same things for the same of elongating a game that is already, spread really thin on its impressions, and it's just not good enough. And it makes me sad because I was really excited for this game, and it does a lot of things great, it just does things that I find lacking. And that is not to say, if you like this game, that this is a slant against you or a slight against the developer. It's just, I think it could have been better in so many ways, and you can probably say that about everything, but this is a glaring example of where too much, is not a good thing. Sometimes less is better, and we all say, oh, I wish it was longer, I wish it had more. This is a case where you don't wish that. You get 2/3 through this game, and you wish it would end. And you shouldn't be thinking that with a new game. You should be enjoying it. And that's where I stand. So Macross asks, when you get Dark Souls 2, what is the first dragon shout that you are going to unlock. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that means. You'll have to do a follow-up question, because I don't know what that means. That sounds like Skyrim to me. Isn't it on Skyrim when you get dragon shouts? So next question. Do you know about Crytek bidding for Darksiders because the creator went there or something like that? And they want to do another? Yes, I understand that THQ went bust and they were selling off their properties and nobody bought Darksiders, and I do know that Crytek were interested in it. The cool thing about Crytek is they are based in, I think it's Nottingham, in the country I live in a place where I have sent an email to try and get a foot in the door to be a quality assurance tester, a game tester at a developer. Have they replied? No. So it would be nice if Crytek get it, but how many character-driven action, you know, Metroidvania, Legend of Zelda style games have they made? And it makes you wonder what would they do to it and how would they do to it. Because Vigil, the development team of this game, are a pretty damn competent team. They've managed to do something. You know, the game works, the game functions, and it does exactly what it wants to do. My issues with this game are on a much more technical and sophisticated level. So, it could be a really good thing. There's a lot of teams that this could be given to that they would make a very different game, but it all depends on what you want. And not everybody wants the same things. Like the games that I find amazing, some people hate. Because, you know, that's the joys of opinion and taste. Everybody likes something different. Like every criticism I've layered at this game, there will be somebody who disagrees with them feverishly. Just because that's human nature, that's how this shit works. But we're coming to the end of this video anyhow, folks. It's just been more puzzle-solving, platforming, and savage murdery of Darksiders 2. So I hope it's been helping. I hope you've enjoyed the tangents of the discussions. And as always, you take care now.